So how many of you have heard of a company called IBM? Okay, so that's more of you than we're building software and more of you than we're building hardware. That's good. Okay, so how many of you, yes, this headset's driving me crazy. How many of you have heard of any new partnerships that IBM's announced recently? A couple of you. All right, good. So this is going to help you out a little bit. So one of the things that's really important to IBM that some people don't realize is the whole push towards open standards and open source, and that everything's about the ecosystem. And IBM's traditionally a business-to-business company, and we run clouds and we provide all kinds of pieces of software that get embedded into products or run in the cloud and connect products, right? And the last 6 years I've been working on integrating things like ERP systems and banking systems and financial systems and these kind of things to the bank DOSes and mobile apps that people are running to then drive those transactions back and move money across countries, et cetera, right? But these shifts that we're seeing in this market is becoming such that not only can IBM continue to provide pieces of components and be this kind of invisible B2B player, but we need to start thinking about how do we enable everybody else in the ecosystem to leverage and monetize things like the fact that we believe, this earpiece is totally falling off, I can totally feel it, right? But things like the fact that data, right? IBM doesn't want to own all the data. We had this great conversation a moment ago about sensitivity and security and Big Brother watching you, and whether it's Facebook or China or the U.S. government or you name it, et cetera. And we were at a hackathon recently where someone actually made the statement that they believed that IBM wanted to maintain people's data, right? We believe that data is a new way to enable new business models, right? In Sweden, in Denmark, in Malmö, you name it, anywhere. And our goal is to now move away from being a sole business-to-business provider that sells to big companies and leverage this data for everybody to tap into it and find ways to reinvent business models. In particular, in the area of Internet of Things, where we see a huge explosion in tapping into this data and what that data can be used for. The other thing around that is the cloud is making, as you were talking about the hardware and these kind of things, Arduino being a very low-cost device, the cloud is now creating it so that anybody can start doing things without setting up server halls, without having physical locations, you name it. It's creating a whole new way for not only the big companies we serve, but for the big companies we serve to tap into smaller companies, right, that are providing components that flow through those ERP systems, or pieces of transactions that are involved in those payments, whether it's Square or PayPal or a Swedish company like Klarna, you name it, right? So this is really changing the way business works for us IBM. And the third thing we see is that a lot of that shift is happening because of the accessibility of this technology that you discussed, Tommy, that now we all have phones. But in some regions, emerging regions, the phones are a little bit more primitive, right? But they still can communicate. And things like Arduino are bringing hardware to places where it wasn't before, right? So these three things are really driving three big areas for us where most of the conversations I have with clients are happening now. And that's about the conversion of these three things and why that's enabling IoT. And one of the big things that we talk about often is Watson. How many of you have heard of Watson? Okay, a few more of you that have heard about any of our partnerships. Okay, that's good. All right, so Watson, did you hear about it from Jeopardy? Yeah, okay, only a few of you heard about it from Jeopardy. I'd like to find out where the rest of you heard about it. Okay, the other thing that's driving it is things like mobile. And one could argue that mobile's already been driving workload into the cloud and these kind of things, right? But the new thing that's driving it, it's not really new, as you said. We've been doing this for a long time, moving parts around and keeping check on people's supply chain and where money's flowing, et cetera. The other thing that's getting more and more is we're starting to see more conversations with companies who want to build smart coffee cookers, right? Or want to have connected cars, so they'll talk about it in a minute. And they want to use things like some of the data compute that they have, and some that Amazon has, and some that Azure has, and some that IBM has, right? So there's this kind of evolution of where the compute is, and this ideology that's really driving the fact, which is going to be the realization of the ideology, that compute is going to be like electricity, right? And it's not only going to be in the cloud. It's going to be on your phone, and it's going to be on smart devices like Arduinos, and in cameras, and in coffee cookers, et cetera, et cetera. But the thing that's driving this significantly is the fact that we as consumers, right? And now we're going to take the consumer, the people angle for a moment. We have consumers demand it because we are lazy. And it's not that I don't want to go to the store to buy Tide dishwasher detergent, to be candid, because I love going to the store and browsing and buying stuff I didn't need, right? Because that's what they try to do at the store, get you to buy things you didn't really need when you went in there. But because I'd rather spend time with my family, right, or my friends, or working on projects that I find more rewarding than going to the store and buying laundry detergent, right? So we as consumers demand to spend our time elsewhere, and that's what's driving a lot of the systems that we're creating. And I imagine all of you are creating parts of to be guessing, right, based on the fact you're here. But one example I wanted to bring up where we're starting to see actual realizations of some very interesting stuff is we're partnering with companies like Sprint and Continental and PSA and other automakers as well, right, around things that change the way not only we track goods and services and integrate to telco networks, but also how we build data sensors into things like tires, which is, if you would have asked me 3 years ago if we were reading data off of tires to find braking data out, I would have said, no, it's not going to happen. It's never going to happen. Maybe not in a million years, right? And sure enough, we're already doing it, and they're already going into production. They do a lot of things other than tires. Absolutely. That's a very good point, right? But that was the one I wouldn't have believed, right? And obviously with PSA. But the interesting thing about all these conversations with these companies, when we start talking about the cloud, right? They don't have clouds everywhere. They want global reach, but they don't have data centers everywhere. So there starts becoming a challenge of how do you distribute this so that all their consumers in every market they provide services to can access these features and functions, etc. And it means that we can't only partner with Sprint in the US, but we have to partner with people like Telenor and you name it, other providers in other regions as well, right? So what's IBM's role in that, and what do I get my rocks off, so to speak, when I'm talking to clients, right? It's basically about building 3 layers of an ecosystem that allow any player, right, small, medium, and large, right, to tap in to things that manage the security of those devices, right, to make sure that some things that are built and delivered, right, are managed across their whole life cycle, right? And not only that, but to allow anybody to build solutions like Continental or PSA for that matter, that plug into pieces of this. And the reason why I brought this up is because in Sweden, in particular, Europe in general, I would say, I was personally amazed when we got acquired, right, at how IBM looks at this ecosystem and how they're tapping into it and why they're building it to facilitate more business-to-business relationships and make more data available to more people in a secure way, right, to ensure that those products can be rolled out, can deliver better value and services, etc. But because I didn't realize it either, to be honest with you. I mean, I had heard about Eclipse and open source and a few projects here and there and Java, but not to the extent that IBM does it. So, so you talked about some pieces of products that roll into all these. And 8 years ago, or I guess it was maybe 7 years ago, about the time we were getting acquired, IBM started rolling out something they called the Smarter Planet Initiative. And the Smarter Planet Initiative was basically a marketing push. It was top level, marketing coming out and saying, technology is going to make the world smarter, and software is the way to do it, and we're shifting to be a software. And they started going out and they did things like the Trängselskatt, right, in Stockholm. Everybody been to Stockholm and seen the little sensors? Yeah, that was like one of the early smarter cities things, right? Obviously, early adopter, right? It definitely had its troubles, right? But over the last 7 years, there's been more and more products and things coming out in different areas, right? And the thing that IBM has realized is we can't build all these solutions. There's no way. It's absolutely impossible. We're not even interested in building all the solutions. So, if we're going to move past where, as you so distinctly described, the old days where these were proprietary systems that nobody had access to, and into today, which is very open systems in a very centralized set of clouds, right? primarily delivered by AWS, Microsoft, IBM, and then some other players who I won't give honorable mention to today, to a space where there will be open access to all of the IoT networks and the compute will be distributed, right? This needs more people involved, right? So, as a seed for tomorrow's conversation that we're going to be doing with Vadim, I'll talk about in a minute, we're basically about three things, helping companies in three ways, right? One is helping companies, as I mentioned, tap into the opportunities around data, cloud, engagement, and stuff that we're finding out in these great, smarter areas we're building, right? Giving people to access to technologies like Watson. We were at a conference, I think it was Eurodev, not too long ago, Lawrence and I, and we were sitting in the room and someone said, it's not like anybody's giving any cognitive or AI computing away for free, and we kind of laughed because we are. It's like in our platform, it runs, you can all get access to it and start testing cognitive computing services in the cloud for free. Other great stuff that IBM has because they're big and etc. But to the partnership point, how many, so I was surprised, nobody's heard about the partnership between Apple and IBM? There's this really cool picture of Steve Jobs in front of IBM from like the 70s or something. He's like, giving it the big middle finger in New York City, right? Anybody's ever seen that picture? He's like wearing a leather jacket, and it's like totally the anti-IBM thing, right? So just not too long ago, Tim Cook and Ginny, the CEOs, let's just put it this way, the CEOs if you don't know their names, came together, and Apple and IBM are now huge partners, right? Who would have thought in my lifetime, right? I would have never thought that in a million years either, right? That Apple and IBM would be partners. I mean, I was a Mac kid, right? I hated the PC with a passion, right? It was the worst thing that ever got invented, right? I love my 2E. SAP, right? If people, some of my clients, right, think that SAP is a huge competitor to IBM, but that's not true at all, right? We have a globally strategic alliance. SAP's strategic cloud provider is IBM. Weird, right? I mean, shouldn't they build their own cloud? I mean, they're huge, right? And they have all the ERP systems and all the data, and they have data warehouses to say where lots of goods and products are sold and who you can buy them from, and it's all over the world. But they didn't want to get in the business of building cloud computing, so they partnered with IBM. Twitter. IBM partnered with a company like Twitter. That's weird, right? AT&T. The Weather Channel. Weather Channel has like more weather sensors in all the world than any other weather agency, right? And IBM recently partnered with the Weather Channel, in particular around IoT. Because the weather, if we start looking at smarter agriculture and these kind of things, the weather is a big determinant. So if you want to hear a little bit about just some kind of way out ideas we're talking about, tomorrow we're going to talk about Twitter and the Weather Channel, and we're going to put that together with something and have a little chat about how we think you correlate data from multiple sources, right? And how that provides valuable insight to take decisions that maybe protect assets or goods or services or people's data or people's personal information, etc. So tomorrow we're actually going to be presenting at the IoT conference with myself and Vila, and we're going to be talking about in one of those three layers, they basically have an open source Java toolkit that they deliver through one of our platforms globally, and we're going to be showing you how we piece that together with a drone and connect it to a little bit of a smart agricultural scenario and shed some insight on what happens when you take things like drones that fly and put them to good use, right? And take data like that you might be able to get from the Weather Channel or Twitter and figure out how to maybe do something with the drone. The reason why I want to bring this up is because not only are we as a company at IBM interested in giving people all these stuff, we've changed our mode from we deliver for you to we deliver with you, which I think is a big change in IBM. It definitely was not the way it was when we got acquired at Telelogic. It was very different, right? So IBM's going through a massive change. Things like Internet of Things is changing it. And we're happy to partner with everybody to build better systems of engagement, drive more innovation through the insight. Yay. Blah, blah, blah.